Once upon a time, in a peaceful village nestled at the foot of a majestic mountain, there lived a wise old farmer named Liang. Liang was known far and wide for his calm demeanor and his ability to find wisdom in the simplest of events. He lived with his only son, Wei, and together they tended to their modest farm, relying on their horse, Bai, to help plow the fields and carry heavy loads. One crisp autumn morning, as the first rays of the sun began to paint the sky in hues of pink and gold, Wei discovered that Bai was missing. Frantically, he searched the barn and the fields, calling out Bai's name, but the horse was nowhere to be found. Distressed, Wei ran to his father, who was sitting under a large oak tree, sipping his morning tea. "Father, Bai is gone. I looked everywhere, but I can't find him," Wei exclaimed, his voice trembling with worry. Liang looked up, his eyes calm and thoughtful. He took a deep breath and said, "Do not be distressed, my son. Losing Bai may not be a bad thing. It is hard to say what is good or bad." Wei was puzzled by his father's response. How could losing their only horse be anything but bad? Without Bai, their work would be much harder, and their farm might suffer. But Wei trusted his father's wisdom and decided to wait and see what would happen. Days turned into weeks, and life continued in the village. One sunny afternoon, as Wei was returning from the market, he saw a familiar figure trotting towards him from the edge of the forest. It was Bai, but he was not alone. Following him were 3 beautiful wild horses, their manes flowing in the breeze. Excitedly, Wei ran to his father, who was tending to the garden. "Father, look! Bai has returned, and he brought 3 wild horses with him." Liang smiled gently and nodded. "Indeed, this is a fortunate turn of events. Now we have more horses to help with the farm work. But remember, my son, it is hard to say what is good or bad." Wei was overjoyed. With the new horses, their farm work became easier, and they even had time to help their neighbors. The village praised Liang and Wei for their good fortune, and life seemed to be better than ever. One day, Wei decided to tame one of the wild horses. He carefully approached the strongest and most spirited horse, hoping to make it his own. As he climbed onto its back, the horse reared up, throwing Wei to the ground. Wei landed awkwardly and felt a sharp pain in his leg. He tried to stand but couldn't. His leg was badly injured. Hearing his son's cries, Liang rushed to his side and carried him back to their home. The village healer came and bandaged Wei's leg, but it was clear that he would need time to recover and could not help with the farm work for several months. As Wei lay in bed, frustrated and in pain, he lamented, "Father, if only I hadn't tried to tame that horse. This is so unfortunate." Liang, sitting by his son's bedside, placed a comforting hand on Wei's shoulder and said, "My son, do not be so quick to judge. It is hard to say what is good or bad. Rest and heal, and let time reveal its wisdom." Weeks passed, and Wei's leg slowly began to heal. Meanwhile, Liang and the villagers took care of the farm, ensuring that everything was in order. One morning, news spread through the village that soldiers from a neighboring kingdom were coming to conscript young men for an impending war. The villagers were filled with fear and anxiety, knowing that many of their sons might be taken away. When the soldiers arrived at Liang's farm, they saw Wei lying in bed with his injured leg. Seeing that he was unfit for battle, they passed him by and moved on to the next house. The villagers' sons were taken away, but Wei was spared because of his injury. When the soldiers left, the villagers came to Liang and said, "You are indeed fortunate. While our sons have been taken to fight, your son remains safe at home. How lucky you are." Liang, with his calm and wise demeanor, replied, It is hard to say what is good or bad. We can only accept what comes our way and trust in the flow of life. Wei, reflecting on the events that had transpired, began to understand his father's perspective. The loss of their horse had brought new opportunities, and his injury, which seemed so unfortunate, had ultimately protected him from being taken to war. As Wei's leg healed and he regained his strength, he often thought about the wisdom of his father's words. He realized that life was full of unexpected twists and turns, and that judging events as purely good or bad was often short-sighted. Instead, he learned to embrace each moment with patience and acceptance, trusting that time would reveal the true nature of each event. Years later, as Wei became a wise man in his own right, he shared his father's teachings with his own children and the villagers. He would often tell them the story of the lost horse, emphasizing the importance of keeping an open mind and going with the flow of life. And so, the wisdom of Liang was passed down through generations, reminding everyone in the village that life is a journey filled with both joy and sorrow, and that true peace comes from accepting each moment as it is. In the end, the village thrived, and its people lived in harmony, guided by the simple yet profound lesson: it is hard to say what is good or bad. And just like the river that flowed gently through the valley, they learned to go with the flow, finding strength and wisdom in the natural course of life.